just between you and me, the whole 60 people who tend to watch my videos. God, can you guys tell your friends about me, please? I mean, I'm entertaining and I know what I'm talking about. God. Hello everyone, my name is Lana McCarthy and I am a registered and licensed dietitian, blah, blah, blah. And this is another episode of Let Me Learn Ya, where I share with you all of the random frickin' things that I've learned about the human body and food and who knows what else. I was reading some interesting things about possums the other day so that you don't have to investigate on your own and instead just watch me entertain you in these videos. Ding! Today we're talking about something very near and dear to my heart. It is a sneaky group of foods that could be the cause of all your digestive woes. Why do I call them sneaky? Because they aren't like the typical offenders. If you search online or talk to your doctor or talk to a dietitian and you tell them that you have digestive problems, usually they'll tell you to cut out processed foods, super high fat, high sugary foods that are super spicy, caffeine. Well, these foods are none of those, and they're actually very healthy foods that every doctor, every dietitian, and the USDA guidelines recommend that you eat anywhere from 2 to 8 servings of a day. And what are those things I'm talking about? FODMAPs. I know, it's kind of a weird word, but it's an acronym. FODMAP stands for fermentable, oligosaccharide, disaccharide, monosaccharide, and polyols. This is a group of highly fermentable short-chain carbohydrates that for whatever reason, certain people just have a difficult time digesting. If you haven't heard about it, if you've kind of heard about it but you're not sure of it, if you have digestive problems, which I'm gonna list out shortly, this video is for you. If you are someone who has been diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome, which is a diagnosis using quotes because what doctors mean when they diagnose you with IBS usually is, well, they have a bunch of digestive problems. We clearly know there's an issue here, but we have no idea what's causing it. And then you, the poor individual, is sent on your way feeling like, well, I'm just cursed with this and this is my life from now on. If you are somebody who suffers from constipation, diarrhea, gas, bloating, nausea, or all of those things, if you eat super healthy, like I'm talking you are a vegan vegetarian, you eat tons of fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, whole grains, and you feel terrible all the time. If you are somebody who has tried cutting out some of the top offenders, such as wheat and dairy, highly processed food, high fat, high sugar foods, the spices, the caffeine, and have seen no improvements in your symptoms, then this is the video for you. We may laugh and joke about, oh, a little diarrhea, a little constipation, a little gas, laugh at people feeling bloated and feeling like they're gonna birth out a Chewbacca toot baby. Here is the reality of the situation. People polled who suffered from IBS reported that they would literally give up 10 to 15 years of their life if it meant that for the rest of their life, they would no longer experience symptoms. It drastically lowers your quality of life to be suffering from these symptoms all the time. So for all of you out there that are suffering right now, I feel so much empathy for you. Know this is a very common thing to experience. You are not alone. And when it comes to gastrointestinal problems, and I'm just gonna say GI from now on because that word is too long for me and I'm feeling lazy. Sometimes people have genetic disorders or they have problems that need to be addressed with surgery or pharmaceutical drugs. But I'm telling you that a lot of the times it's the diet, you guys. What the hell is an oligosaccharide? Am I even pronouncing it right? I don't know, I'm just a dietitian, I should know this. Whatever, you guys. Duodenum is pronounced like 40 different ways and nobody can agree on it, so cut me some slack. Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. As mentioned, FODMAPs are a group of fermentable short-chain carbohydrates. You've heard the term carbohydrates, you've heard carbs, you've probably heard carbs is bad in K. None of that is true, but whatever. It's a complicated topic, you guys. I'll do a video on it. Basically, summed up very simply, carbohydrates are sugars. They are different types of sugars, and they are different structures of sugar. What you hear in FODMAPs is oligosaccharide, monosaccharide, and disaccharide. Saccharide means sugar. Mono means one. So monosaccharide is one sugar molecule. Di means two. So disaccharide is a two sugar molecule. Oligosaccharide, I don't remember what oligo stands for. Maybe it means many, like octopus. That's not even close. Oligosaccharides, it's sugar molecules that are anywhere from 3 to 10 molecules. Let's start with the smallest, which is the monosaccharide, the M in FODMAP, and that is fructose. You've probably heard of fructose. You've probably heard of high fructose corn syrup. Most of the processed foods contain high fructose corn syrup, and high fructose corn syrup is abnormally higher in fructose than is naturally present in nature, except for agave. We'll get to that too. Our most basic sugar molecules are glucose, which you might have heard of, fructose, and galactose. When those molecules combine, they make disaccharides and oligosaccharides. Some examples of foods that contain fructose are apples, pears, honey, agave. Agave, I believe, is one of the highest natural sources of fructose, and that's a whole other conversation. Maybe I'll do a history of agave. You guys let me know if you want to hear the history of agave. Now we move into disaccharides, and that's when, as I said, the one unit sugar molecules, fructose, glucose, galactose, combine to become even more delicious sugars. Table sugar is actually a disaccharide. It is a combination of glucose and fructose, which then makes sucrose. The more you know. But in the case of FODMAPs, the disaccharide that is your enemy is lactose. Lactose is a two sugar molecule of 1 unit of glucose and 1 unit of galactose. Where do you find lactose? All dairy, milk, ice cream, certain specific cheeses. All dairy contains lactose, although some cheeses, because the bacteria uses the lactose to ferment the cheese, they're lower in lactose. Certain cheeses are more offensive than other cheeses, such as cottage cheese, ricotta cheese. My mom would yell at me, she's Italian, she'd be like, ricotta. I'm probably still saying it wrong. Cream cheese. Let's move up a notch to the larger sugars, which are oligosaccharides. So oligosaccharides are just chains of sugar units. Before, when we were talking about fructose just being off on its own, if fructose comes together in like a 10 unit molecule, that's what would be called a fructan. Fructans are one of the oligosaccharides in the O of FODMAPs that are going to cause you problems. The other one is galacto-oligosaccharides, which is usually just shortened as GOS. Foods that are high in fructans, sorry everybody, everything wheat. Pasta, biscuits, cereals, treats, broccoli, blueberries, oat milk. Shameless plug, check out my Oatly oat milk review. Foods that are high in galacto-oligosaccharides are most beans. So now you understand why a lot of people have problems eating beans. It's usually the GOS that's in there. Butternut squash, soy milk, almonds. Then we get to the final one, which is polyols, which is basically sugar alcohol. Usually people hear about sugar alcohols used in diet foods because your body can't digest them as well, so you don't extract as much energy from them, but they still taste sweet. They're great in treats where you want to get that sweet factor, but you don't want the calories. How do you identify most sugar alcohols? Does it have an OL after it? Sorbitol, mannitol, erythritol. These are all sugar alcohols. There are a lot of foods where sugar alcohols are naturally present. Foods that contain sorbitol are prunes, green bell peppers, and coconut. Side note, I know a lot of people who when they eat green bell peppers, they get acid reflux, they feel kind of nauseous, they just don't feel well. But if they eat red peppers or yellow peppers, they're fine. Some examples of foods that are high in mannitol are peaches, cauliflower, and mushrooms. All you paleo people, All you people switching out your rice for cauliflower, you might be messing up your mojo. These are just a few examples in each category, and I hate to be the one to be the bearer of bad news, but there are many, many, many more. People feel some relief when they hear about FODMAPs because they think, oh my God, maybe this is the solution. This is what I've been searching for this whole time. And then they immediately get super depressed when they see all the foods that contain FODMAPs, some of their favorite foods, and they wonder, what am I gonna eat? But know this, most people don't have issues with all of the FODMAPs. Some people just have an issue digesting GOS, for instance, the beans and the mushrooms, but they're totally fine digesting fructans, which is like the wheat, and you'll find in the apples. I am leaving a link in the description below to an RD's website that lists out all the foods that are high in FODMAP. So definitely check it out. But do know, I have heavily investigated this. I have looked at research, I have looked at websites, I have looked at doctors' websites, and what have you. I have gotten conflicting information across all of them. I'll be talking a little bit about Monash University. I hope that's how you pronounce it, because that's how I'm gonna be pronouncing it later on in this video, which is considered basically the authority on FODMAPs. They're the ones that I really trust to report accurate information on FODMAPs. Also, very important to understand with FODMAPs, just because an apple is marked high in FODMAP, it doesn't mean that all apples in any amount are going to trigger a response in you. With FODMAPs, I want you to remember the famous phrase, the dose makes the poison. You can be okay eating half a cup of apples, but if you eat a whole cup of apples, you may go off to Toot Town or have to run to the bathroom super fast. So know also that you may not have to cut these foods out completely. You may just have to limit the amount that you eat in one sitting. So there is hope, you guys. It's not as scary as it appears. We are in this together. Don't worry, okay, friends? Cool. It is not all doom and gloom. There's happiness at the end of the tunnel. Okay, so now that we've established what FODMAPs are, why the hell do you have a problem with FODMAPs? Why is it that the majority of the population has no problem digesting these carbohydrates? Well, this is a fairly new discovery. It is still being thoroughly researched. So there's pretty much theories at this point as to why certain people have issues digesting FODMAPs and others do not. It's only been probably within the last 10 years that doctors and researchers are realizing that perhaps the majority of people who have IBS or think they're gluten intolerant actually have a FODMAPs issue. Some sort of gut microbiome dysbiosis occurs. What the hell do I mean by that? For lack of a better term, we say gut, and I will be using gut because it's easier than me always saying small and large intestine. When we're talking about the gut microbiome, what we're talking about is the small intestine somewhat, and mostly your large intestine. But what's the microbiome? I'm hoping most of you know this by now, but some of you may not. I don't want you to freak out, calm down, everything's cool. But we're all totally covered on the outside and inside with microscopic little critters like bacteria and yeast. But the cool part is that these little dudes are basically our armor. We have developed what is called a symbiotic relationship. You get something out of them being there, and they get something out of you being there. If you're not alive and doing well, neither are they. So they do their best to keep you nice and healthy. There are different types of microbiomes. There's a microbiome on your skin, microbiome in your mouth, microbiome in your nether regions. We're gonna be focusing on the gut microbiome. So those guys are there to protect us and provide us with beneficial compounds, such as, if you've heard of them, short chain fatty acids. So these little dudes support our immune system, the health of our intestines, our mental health, I'll do a video on that. Super interesting. And so much more, you guys. I have to do a separate thing on these little gut bugs. How healthy you are, whether or not you have taken antibiotics or currently on antibiotics, have taken a ton of antibiotics your whole life, whether you were breastfed, whether you were born by cesarean or vaginally, whether you go outside a lot, all of this can affect your gut microbiome. Additionally, what you eat feeds them. Think about that the next time you choose a bag of Cheetos. You are feeding the type of bacteria that loves to feed on Cheetos. The more you feed, the more they breed. I don't know what I'm saying. But think about it. If I put cat food outside in my backyard, I would be overrun with cats. But what if I was trying to attract dogs? Yeah, the dogs would show up too, because dogs are pigs. What doesn't eat cat food? What if I was trying to attract birds into my backyard, but I just kept throwing cat food out there? And birds don't eat cat food, clearly, and also cats eat birds. That's what happens when you feed your body food that more pathogenic bacteria enjoys. They will bully out any of the good guys. And thus far, research has shown that highly processed foods, refined sugars, high fats can shift your microbiome into a direction of more disease-causing bacteria, where diets higher in whole foods and fiber can shift you in a more healthy, happy gut microbiome. So in the case of somebody who has a FODMAP intolerance, for whatever reason, the microbiome is messed up. You either have too many of the dudes that feed on carbohydrates, or you have too little of the dudes that feed on carbohydrates. If you have too many of those little dudes, when you eat FODMAP foods that are highly fermentable, those guys go to town, man. And if any of you have made bread during the whole pandemic thing, or ever seen beer being made, or have ever had a kombucha, what do you see? You see bubbles. The process of fermentation of bacteria breaking down these carbohydrates, the result is gas. If you have too many of these guys going buck wild on these short chain fermentable carbohydrates, gas party 2021. And that's what causes your painful gas and bloating. If you don't have enough of these good little critters, some of these carbohydrates, if they're left to just sit in your intestine, have an osmotic effect, which means they draw water into the intestine. Can you see where I'm going with this? When water draws into your intestines and is mixed with all the other stuff in there, we've got Rheaville, the big D, if you will. The trots, as they used to call it in my day. Just kidding, we never called it the trots. We called it the runs. So that is the theory, that a imbalance in gut bacteria is what's causing people to have issues digesting these carbohydrates. So we've talked about what FODMAPs are. We've talked about the symptoms. We've talked about what causes it. And now you're saying, what the hell am I supposed to do about it, Lana? Like, I'm dying here. I feel like I'm 9 months pregnant and am constantly searching for a bathroom. So what do I recommend if you suspect that you may have a FODMAP insensitivity, intolerance, what have you? You're not gonna like what I have to say. I highly, highly recommend, if you have the ability to do so, seek out help from a registered dietitian. Even bigger points if you can find a registered dietitian who has gone through training with Monash University. There are a few reasons why I say that. This is a highly restrictive diet. When you see the types of foods that you will not be able to eat, you will understand why I say it's restrictive. Because of how restrictive it is, this can trigger people who have eating disorders, a history of eating disorders, in a negative way. A registered dietitian will be able to help guide someone who has that history through this process safely. The other issue is that somebody who doesn't understand nutrition very well won't understand that if you're cutting out all of these groups of foods, like for instance, most dairy, all of wheat, that you need to replace those nutrients that you're cutting out with foods that are high in those nutrients as well. People can develop nutrient deficiencies when attempting this diet on their own. The other issue that I see, and I see this happening the most, people cut out all of the foods, they don't replace the lost nutrients, they don't eat enough fiber, and they are subsisting on a very restricted diet, and they become so terrified that if they eat one little thing or make one little change to their routine, that bam, their symptoms are going to come back, which I totally understand. But because of this, they end up worsening their problem, impairing their digestion even more so that the foods that seemed to be safe before are suddenly now causing them to have reactions. It's really sad to see. I've worked with clients with this and my heart just went out to them because I've felt that before. I felt that feeling out of control, thinking nothing I do is right, like what is going on here, what is happening? On Tuesday, I could eat this and it was fine. On Friday, I ate it and I had, the trot. That's another reason why you need to work with a professional, because they know about this stuff and they know how to prevent that from happening. Another issue people make is that they make too many changes too quickly. In science, you change one variable and that's it. If there's any other variable there, you will not know which one had the effect. What I see is that people are so, again, desperate to feel some relief that they'll start doing everything all at once. They'll make so many changes. They'll test a couple FODMAP foods at the same time. And it's just very hard to be able to tell what's triggering, what's not triggering, what's working, what's not working. And the last issue is not getting enough fiber. A lot of these high FODMAP foods are some of the best sources of fiber. We're talking whole grains, vegetables, fruits, nuts, beans. Again, it's important to work with a dietitian to prevent all of these things from happening. This is not a permanent diet. This should not be a diet that you're on for the rest of your life. It's not like you have celiac disease and you should never eat gluten ever again because you have an autoimmune disorder. The FODMAP diet is actually a process when done properly. Another issue that people have is that they think, I'm gonna remove all these foods and this is how I'm gonna live for the rest of my life. That's not how it should be, because again, this is a very restrictive diet. Now look, I'm not a moron, okay? I know most of you aren't gonna seek out a registered dietitian. I know that a lot of you cannot afford, for whatever reason, whether it's money or time or what have you, or maybe you don't have access to a registered dietitian. So this part is for you. I'm going to try to do my best to guide you, but know that this does not replace working with an actual registered dietitian. Number one, first and foremost, I definitely recommend you check out Monash University's website. They have an entire blog devoted to FODMAPs. They discuss their research, all of the frequently asked questions. They're constantly doing research and updating their information. They are the ones that are going out and teaching registered dietitians how to lead people through this process. They are the number one best source of accurate information. I recommend, if you choose to do this on your own, that you get the Monash University app. You can get it on your phone. Unfortunately, it does cost money. I believe it's around $13. But let me tell you, if you are doing this, you need this app, and I'll tell you why. Number one, it has the most accurate and up-to-date foods that are FODMAP. You will not find a more accurate source. Second thing is that you can track your food in that app. You can mark off, do you have a problem with that food or not? Number three, they tell you what each food is high in, specifically of what FODMAP. They'll tell you, is this food high in GOS? Is it high in fructose? Sometimes there are foods that are high in multiple FODMAPs. They tell you all of that in a very easy format. And the other super cool thing about the FODMAPs app, and I swear to God this isn't an advertisement, although somebody should pay me for something, for crying out loud, I need money. They show you the safe serving amounts, and that's what's really important. They will show you that perhaps you can eat a quarter cup or a half a cup of broccoli, but not a cup of broccoli. Then it gets into danger territory. The app itself is really going to be a good guide that is based in evidence. First thing that you want to do in this process is you want to eliminate. You can do this in a couple ways. You can start easy, like a gentle FODMAP test, where you eliminate the top offenders. Those are usually things like apples, garlic, onions. Just to give a couple examples, start by eliminating the high FODMAP foods. And if you already start feeling better, then you know you've got a FODMAP issue, right? If you continue to feel symptoms, then you might want to start going down the line of, now I'm going to start eliminating the medium FODMAP foods, and so on and so on. Or you can go in the direction of, I am so miserable, I just want to cut all of these out immediately and then work my way back up. If you eliminate these foods, I highly suggest you check out my food data. I'm going to put a link in the description below. I help you guys so much. You guys are so lucky to have me. I'm in a weird mood, y'all, a weird mood. My food data is an excellent source of all things nutrition. You can click on any type of vitamin, any type of mineral, even vegetarian protein, foods that are high in omega-3, and they will give you a list of the top 10 foods highest in those nutrients. And also, if you want to go even deeper, all the foods that contain those nutrients. Their information is directly pulled from a USDA database, but it's in an easier to digest format, which is why I recommend this website. So when you're eliminating foods and you see that you're eliminating wheat, for instance, which are usually high in a lot of B vitamins, iron, you can go to my food data and be like, what foods are high in iron and B vitamins, and then check your FODMAP friendly list and eat those foods to try to make sure that you're not developing any type of nutrient deficiency. After you've eliminated these foods and you're feeling better, your next step is to strengthen your digestive system, specifically your intestines. There's kind of conflicting information and everybody argues about the best way to do this, but I'm going to talk to you about the ones that have the most information about them, the most research. First step in strengthening is obviously eliminating the FODMAP foods, but you're also gonna wanna consider eliminating super high fat, super high sugar, super high processed foods, because all of these types of foods feed the baddies in your gut. Now, if you are somebody who at this point in time in your life, that's just the only type of food that you can eat, then counter that by trying to get some sort of foods that have prebiotics in them. Prebiotics are fibers that feed good bacteria in your gut. Look at the FODMAP foods that are friendly, that have fiber in them, and make sure you're eating enough of those, because that's gonna help feed the good bacteria in your gut and help strengthen and heal your gut. Again, gut, intestines, whatever. Probiotics, actually, there is a ton of evidence about probiotics. I'm gonna do a whole separate video at some point. Improving intestinal health. Now, not in the way that a lot of people think. When you take probiotics, a lot of the time, depending on the probiotic, they don't colonize your intestine, but they have, when they're in there, all kinds of benefits. Even if the probiotics are dead, even if it's just chunks, I forget what they're called. Postbiotics? I think they call the dead chunks of probiotics postbiotic, and also what the probiotics create. While those probiotics are in there, they're having an effect on supporting your immune system and supporting your intestinal health. Probiotics are important. I will put a link in the description below of the most researched probiotic that I know of that has the most science behind it. It is expensive, but I'm sure there are other options that are more affordable. Just a couple suggestions looking for probiotics. Make sure that it's enteric coated so that it can make it past the stomach acid into your intestines where it should be delivered. A broad spectrum probiotic has been shown to have more benefit than ones that just have one species. Instead of just having one strain, it has multiple. So you'll see all kinds of different types of lactobacillus, all different kinds of bifidobacteriums. Then there's other things, like if you're going to be eating vegetables, cook the vegetables. They're easier to digest than raw vegetables. This is especially important for people who tend to get diarrhea from eating vegetables. Homemade broth specifically. Broth isn't the amazing superfood that people try to say that it is, but it is a very good beneficial food. There are nutrients in there that require zero digestion, provide various vitamins and minerals, and it's delicious. You can use it to add flavor to all kinds of dishes. So consider making a homemade broth. Then there's the usual things that also affect your digestive system, and that's stress. If you have stress in your life, try to figure out ways to cope with it. Yoga, meditation, going for short walks during the day, making sure that you're sleeping, that you're getting enough sleep at night, maybe developing a sleep routine before you go to bed if you have trouble falling asleep. These are all things that you can do to work on strengthening your gut health. Once you're feeling super snazzy and like you're a new person and your gut's stronger and you're not having as many symptoms and everything, that is the time to reintroduce. This is a really good time, again, to have the Monash University app because you can track your foods. Or you can have a food journal and just make sure that when you're reintroducing a food, you are only reintroducing that one food. You take a FODMAP friendly day, a day that you know the things that you eat give you no symptoms. And then you introduce like half a cup of apple and you monitor your symptoms. Do you feel any gas? Do you have any diarrhea, any bloating or constipation? If you don't, okay, it's time to introduce the next food. I usually recommend if you have a day where you have a reaction that you might want to take a short break. Just let everything reset and go and then retest. Some of you may find out that you are just never able to tolerate onion, for instance, but you can tolerate all these other FODMAP foods that you couldn't tolerate before, or maybe you thought you couldn't tolerate. A lot of people go into a FODMAP diet thinking this is going to end all of their problems and they'll be able to eat whatever they want again. That's not necessarily the case, but for a lot of people, it gets you to a point where you do have more freedom with food, you have more freedom with your life, but there's still maybe just some foods that you can't digest, and that's just the reality of it. So that is everything, you guys. FODMAPs are crazy, right? You will hear me say this over and over and over again when I say that there is no such thing as one healthy diet for every single person on this planet. This is what I'm talking about right here. If you have a FODMAPs issue and you went to a doctor and you were like, oh, I'm having all these symptoms and and they're like, oh, well, you should be eating healthy and everything, and lots of whole grains, lots of fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds and beans, legumes. And you're like, yeah, I'm doing all that, but I still have this problem. They're like, oh, okay, you have IBS. Here's some antacids and some anti-anxiety medication. Yeah. There is no healthy diet for everyone. You may be somebody who can't eat, you just can't eat wheat, or you can't eat dairy because your body just wasn't built to handle it. And that's fine. You will find the healthy diet for you that makes you feel good and you feel energized. Hopefully you have found an answer here. I wish all of the luck to all of you who are suffering from this problem. I hope that you find the help that you need. If you can't get the help that you need, I wish you the most success in taking on this journey on your own. I would really hope that some of you would also take from this that you're not crazy. You know your body better than anyone else. And I'm willing to bet that if some of you have suffered from a FODMAP insensitivity, you've been made to feel like you are crazy and that you don't know what's going on. I hope you don't feel that way anymore. I hope you feel like maybe you have an answer. I will be more than happy to answer any of your questions below if I can. There will be a lot of helpful links in the description below in case you guys want more information. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully I did a good enough ending for this so I don't have to re-record anything. This video has been really long. I bet it's longer than the last one. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Maybe I'll take this time to apply my makeup. So reapply. Okay, I'm back, you guys. I'm back. Blah, 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 nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. I should not be allowed to just let my brain go, because when it goes, it ain't coming back. I love possums. Side note, they have got a bad rap. They do not carry rabies, just FYI. They are the cutest, and I have one living under the shed in my backyard, and it can live there as long as it wants. My prerogative. And then they are called FODMAP. They are called FODMAP. Can you stop sneezing back there? Everybody can hear you, you know? Why are you sneezing?